Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, reading from Adi Lila, chapter 7, verse 27 onwards. Mukam karoti vachalam, pangum lankayate girim, yadkripatamam vande, Shri Gurum Deen Tarinam, Paramanandamadvam, Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram, Hari Om Tat Sat. Verse 27, chapter 7 of Adi Lila. Translation: When the five members of the Panchatattva saw the entire world drowned in love of Godhead and the seed of material enjoyment in the living entities completely destroyed, they all became exceedingly happy. Purport: In this connection, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anubhashya that since the living entities all belong to the marginal potency of the Lord, each and every living entity has a natural tendency to become Krishna conscious, although at the same time the seed of material enjoyment is undoubtedly within him. The seed of material enjoyment, watered by the course of material nature, fructifies to become a tree of material entanglement that endows the living entity with all kinds of material enjoyment. To enjoy such material facilities is to be afflicted with the three material miseries. However, when by nature's law there is flood, the seeds within the earth become inactive. Similarly, as the inundation of love of Godhead spreads all over the world, the seeds of material enjoyment become impotent. Thus, the more the Krishna consciousness movement spreads, the more the desire for material enjoyment decreases. The seed of material enjoyment automatically becomes impotent with the increase of the Krishna consciousness movement. Instead of being envious that Krishna consciousness is spreading all over the world by the grace of Lord Chaitanya, those who are jealous should be happy, as indicated here by the words Param Ullas. But because they are Kanishtadhikaris or Prakrit Bhaktas, materialistic devotees who are not advanced in spiritual knowledge, they are envious instead of happy, and they try to find faults in the Krishna consciousness movement. Yet Srimad Prabhupada Saraswati writes in his Chaitanya Charitamrita that when influenced by Lord Chaitanya's Krishna consciousness movement, materialists become averse to talking about their wives and children. Supposedly learned scholars give up their tedious studies of Vedic literature, yogis give up of mystic yoga, ascetics give up their austere activities of penance and austerity, and sannyasis give up their study of Sankhya philosophy. Thus, they are all attracted by the Bhakti Yoga practices of Lord Chaitanya and cannot relish a mellow superior to that of Krishna consciousness. Verse 28. The more the five members of the Panchatattva cause the rains of love of Godhead to fall, the more the inundation increases and spreads all over the world. Purport: The Krishna consciousness movement is not stereotyped or stagnant. It will spread all over the world in spite of all objections by fools and rascals that European and American militias cannot be accepted as brahmanas or sannyasis. Here it is indicated that this process will spread and inundate the entire world with Krishna consciousness. Verses 29 and 30. Translation: The impersonalist, fruitive workers, false logicians, blasphemers, non-devotees and lowest among the student community are very expert in avoiding the Krishna consciousness movement, and therefore the inundation of Krishna consciousness cannot teach them. Purport: Like Mayavadi philosophers in the past, such as Prakashananda Saraswati of Benares, modern impersonalists are not interested in Lord Chaitanya's Krishna consciousness movement. They do not know the value of this material world. They consider it false and cannot understand how the Krishna consciousness movement can utilize it. They are so absorbed in impersonal thought that they take it for granted that all spiritual variety is material, because they do not know anything beyond their misconception of the Brahmajyoti. They cannot understand that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is spiritual and therefore beyond the conception of material illusion. Whenever Krishna incarnates personally or as a devotee, these Mayavadi philosophers accept him as an ordinary human being. This is condemned in Bhagavad Gita 9.11. Avjananti ma murham manushim tanum ashritam param bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. Fools deride me when I descend in this human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. There are also other unscrupulous persons who exploit the Lord's appearance by posing as incarnations to cheat the innocent public. An incarnation of God should pass the tests of the statements of the Shastras and also perform uncommon activities. One should not accept a rascal as an incarnation of God, but should test his ability to act as a Supreme Personality of Godhead. For example, Krishna taught Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, and Arjuna also accepted him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But for our understanding, Arjuna requested the Lord to manifest his universal form, thus testing whether he was actually the Supreme Lord. Similarly, one must test a so-called incarnation of Godhead according to the standard criteria. To avoid being misled by an exhibition of mystic powers, it is best to examine a so-called incarnation of God in the light of statements of the Shastras. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is described in the Shastras as an incarnation of Krishna. Therefore, if one wants to imitate Lord Chaitanya and claim to be an incarnation, he must show evidence from the Shastras about his appearance to substantiate his claim. Verse 31 and 32. Seeing that the Mayavadis and others were fleeing, Lord Chaitanya thought, I wanted everyone to be immersed in this inundation of love of Godhead, but some of them have escaped, therefore I shall devise a trick to drown them also. Purport. Here is an important point. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to invent a way to capture the Mayavadis and others who did not take interest in the Krishna consciousness movement. This is the symptom of an acharya. An acharya who comes for the service of the Lord cannot be expected to conform to a stereotype, for he must find the ways and means by which Krishna consciousness may be spread. Sometimes jealous persons criticize the Krishna consciousness movement because it engages equally both boys and girls in distributing love of Godhead, not knowing that boys and girls in countries like Europe and America mix very freely. These fools and rascals criticize the boys and girls in Krishna consciousness for intermingling. But these rascals should consider that one cannot suddenly change a community's social customs. However, since both the boys and girls are being trained to become preachers, these girls are not ordinary girls but are as good as their brothers who are preaching Krishna consciousness. Therefore, to engage both boys and girls in fully transcendental activities is a policy intended to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. These jealous fools who criticize the intermingling of boys and girls will simply have to be satisfied with their own foolishness, because they cannot think of how to spread Krishna consciousness by adopting ways and means that are favorable for this purpose. Their stereotyped methods will never help spread Krishna consciousness. Therefore, what we are doing is perfect by the grace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for it is he who proposed to invent a way to capture those who strayed from Krishna consciousness. Verse 33. Thus the Lord accepted the sannyas order of life after full consideration. Purport. There was no need for Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to accept sannyas, for he is God himself and therefore has nothing to do with the material bodily concept of life. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not identify himself with any of the 8 varnas and ashrams, namely Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyas. He identified himself as a Supreme Spirit. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or for that matter any pure devotee, never identifies with these social and spiritual divisions of life, for a devotee is always transcendental to these different gradations of society. Nevertheless, Lord Chaitanya decided to accept sannyas on the grounds that when he became a sannyasi, everyone would show him respect and in that way be favored. Although there was actually no need for him to accept sannyas, he did so for the benefit of those who might think him an ordinary human being. The main purpose of his accepting sannyas was to deliver the Mayavadi sannyasis. This will be evident later in this chapter. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has explained the term Mayavadi as follows. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to the material conception of life. A Mayavadi is one who considers the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna to be made of Maya and also considers the abode of Lord and the process of approaching him, devotional service, to be Maya. The Mayavadi considers all the paraphernalia of devotional service to be Maya. Maya refers to material existence, which is characterized by the reactions of fruitive activities. Mayavadis consider devotional service to be among such fruitive activities. According to them, when Bhagavats, that's the devotees, are purified by philosophical speculation, they will come to the real point of liberation. Those who speculate in this way regarding devotional service are called kutar, kikas, that is false logicians, and those who consider devotional service to be fruitive activity are called karmanishthas. Those who criticize devotional service are called nindakas, that is blasphemers. Similarly, non-devotees who consider devotional activities to be material are called pashandis, and scholars with a similar viewpoint are called adham paduyas. The kutarkikas, nindakas, pashandis and adham paduyas are all avoided the benefit of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement of developing love of Godhead. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt compassion for them, and it is for this reason that he decided to accept the sannyas order. For by seeing him as a sannyasi, they would offer him respects. The sannyas order is still respected in India. Indeed, the very dress of a sannyasi still commands respect from the Indian public. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted sannyas to facilitate preaching his devotional cult, although otherwise he had no need to accept the fourth order of spiritual life. Verse 34, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu remained in householder life for 24 years, and on the verge of his 25th year, he accepted the sannyas order. Purport: there are 4 orders of spiritual life, namely Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanprastha and Sannyas. And in each of these ashrams, there are 4 divisions. The divisions of the Brahmacharya ashram are Savitriya, Prajapatya, Brahma and Brihat. And the divisions of Grihastha ashram are Varta, professionals, Sanchaya, accumulators, Shalin, those who do not ask anything from anyone, and Shilonchana, those who collect grains from the paddy fields. Similarly, the divisions of the Vanprastha ashram are Vaikhansa, Valakilya, Audumbara and Fenapa, and the divisions of sannyas are Kutichaka, Bahudaka, Hamsa and Nishkriya. There are 2 kinds of sannyasis who are called Dhiras and Narottams, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.13.26 to 27. At the end of the month of January in the year 1432, Shakabda AD 1510, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted the sannyas order from Keshav Bharati, who belonged to the Shankar Sampradaya. Verse 35, after accepting the sannyas order, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu attracted the attention of all those who had evaded him, beginning with the logicians. Verse 36, thus the students, infidels, fruitive workers and critics all came to surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord. Verse 37, Lord Chaitanya excused them all, and they all merged into the ocean of devotional service, for no one can escape the unique loving network of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Purport: Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was an ideal acharya. An acharya is an ideal teacher who knows the purport of the revealed scriptures, behaves exactly according to their injunctions, and teaches his students to adopt these principles. Also, as an ideal acharya, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu devised ways to capture all kinds of atheists and materialists. Every Acharya has a specific means of propagating his spiritual movement with the aim of bringing men to Krishna consciousness. Therefore, the method of one Acharya may be different from that of another, but the ultimate goal is never neglected. Srila Rupa Goswami recommends Tasmat kenapi upayena manah Krishne niveshayet sarva vidhi nishedha sur etayor eva kinkara. An Acharya should devise a means by which people may somehow or other come to Krishna consciousness, for they should become Krishna conscious, and all the prescribed rules and regulations may later gradually be introduced. In our Krishna consciousness movement, we follow this policy of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. For example, since boys and girls in the Western countries freely intermingle, special concessions regarding their customs and habits are necessarily to bring them to Krishna consciousness. The Acharya must devise a means to bring them to the devotional service. Therefore, although I am sannyasi, I sometimes take part in getting boys and girls married. Although in the history of sannyas, no sannyasi has personally taken part in marrying his disciples. Okay, we'll carry on from here onwards next time. Thank you for joining. Hare Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.